for me, it's the completely change that happened during the lockdown and the loss of my loved ones that make me reconsider who I really want to be for my children, right? I want to be more present. I became very ill. It was just me not looking after myself, me wanting to achieve and achieve and achieve. I feel very often we need those very expensive things because we need that dopamine boost. So I realized, actually, I'm helping people for free, right? I could make this my living. To me, if a client, texts me that they're finally getting out of antidepressant medications, because they're finally, eating the right thing for them, it gives me so much energy really to keep going.
Hi everyone, my name is Varia and this is Shameless Careers, a podcast about building a career you love. Today, my guest is Angela Seneza. Angela worked in finance for over 17 years, and then she pivoted to become a nutritional therapist and functional medicine practitioner. In this interview, I really want to ask Angela how she decided to leave finance and what doubts she had, how she discovered what brings her fulfillment instead, and what tips she may give to others who may want to start a service-based business. So, Angela, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. So why don't we start with finance, given this is where you spent a large part of your career? So how did you choose finance in the first place?
It just happened, to be honest, because I knew I wanted to live south of Italy and I wanted to go somewhere in the north, in Milan. So I chose the university. I chose the Bocconi University. And one thing that I really wanted to do, I've always loved learning languages and traveling. So I thought I will start with, I'll have a career as a diplomat, right? So that's what I started. But midway through my first year, I realized, actually, I'm not enjoying what I'm learning. And so I was at the university. So I was, okay, what else is available out there? So between the various courses, there was one in finance. And funnily enough, most of my friends at that point were studying that. And also, my dad loved equity investing. So I was, okay, there is lots of connections here. Maybe I'll transition into that course. And that's how it happened. So I started studying that, like equity investing and, finance more in depth. And that's what gave me my first job.
So how was your experience in financial services, and at which point you started to realize that, okay, maybe it's time to explore other areas?
I enjoyed my work, my job in finance, right? All those 17 years for me have been extremely fulfilling. I've learned a lot. But from the very beginning, I always felt there is more to it. Right. So, for example, when I was working in Milan, I was doing drama courses. When I then moved to London, I was studying Spanish. I was for a period studying Jungian psychotherapy. So I enjoyed it, but I've always felt it was very restrictive for me. Through all those sideways that I took, I realized probably I don't know whether I'll be here in the long term, even if in the back of my mind, I've always worked with an ongoing concern, right? So it was about all the things that I've been doing on the side that probably planted seeds into becoming who I am today.
And now kind of looking back, do you get a sense for what potentially was missing? Like, what could you find in these other activities that you explored that you probably couldn't quite get from financial services seat?
Yes. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the financial sector. For me, it was the working 9 to 5. It was the working every day on the same thing. That probably for me was the most uncomfortable thing. I mean, when I started working after a few weeks, I decided I wanted to resign because I couldn't face going to the office every day and doing always the same thing. Even if, I had studied at university, I was going somewhere in the morning, coming back at home later, but it was different every day. So for me, working in an office space and having my schedule structured so methodically and by other people has always been something I never really liked. So I guess the control over who I wanted to develop into, that was one problem for me. Also because, my objectives, who I what I had to do was defined, and not always I agreed with that, right? So probably lack of control was my main problems with, an office job in a way.
And you have explored many different areas. Can you tell me a bit more about it? Because I feel a lot of people who are not quite fulfilled in what they do don't know what they would be doing instead. So can you tell me a bit more about this exploration period when you were figuring out, okay, like what other areas could be potentially interesting?
Yes, I mean, it takes lots of trying, right? I mean, I hear people telling me, oh, you planned it so well. No, I didn't really plan anything. What I did over the years was really trying to listen to myself a little bit more. And probably one big moment for me was when I started studying Jungian psychology, right? Because in a way, I started understanding what was outside of just the body, right? I have back pain, or I have, headaches and all of those things. It was just, there is more to it. There is something we don't necessarily perceive every day because it's not necessarily symptomatic. It's what's inside us, right? So studying how the brain works, the mind works, and all of those things has been extremely important for me. And I guess that is something that I encourage everybody to do, as in listen to yourself a little bit more. Because if there is a little bit of unhappiness or lack of joy, or, you feel tired, you feel bored, maybe that is a way of yourself telling to yourself that there is more that you could be doing, and probably you're not necessarily in the right path, which doesn't mean you need to change. Maybe you just need to add more things to it. Maybe you need to complement things.
And also, to your point, I think it's important to experiment also because you can just test what resonates with you. Because if you start from a blank sheet of paper and you realize that, okay, where you are right now is not as fulfilling, but you don't know what's next, then doing the small experiments, studying something on the side, seeing if you can actually get into it, or maybe it's actually not as interesting, I think could be a valuable experiment.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, as I mentioned, I did not plan necessarily, right? But I also did not jump into the unknown. So I started studying nutrition, for example, when I was in with my last employer. Not with the idea of becoming a nutritional therapist, but with the idea of actually healing my own body, right? Because, of course, I had so many problems over the years. I was in and out of hospitals for years. So that's what brought me to nutrition. And because I was so passionate about it, I could really see how, having helped myself, I can help others. And only at that point, I then made the decision of actually leaving finance behind and then start my business. But I personally would not have left the job and then decided what to do. However, one main phase in my life where I was actually allowed to understand where I wanted to go was the gardening leave that I was given between one job and another. So I had 3 months. And I've always thought, if I have 3 months for myself, I'll go to South America, I'll travel the world, I'll do everything that I cannot do because I have only, I don't know how many days of holidays. But actually in those 3 months, the only thing I did was resting, going around in my neighborhood, visit my family. I did absolutely nothing glamorous. And I stumbled across a nutrition training in those 3 months. And I did it like for a week, right? And that was probably one of the seeds that was planted along the way. Because otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily have thought that nutrition can be the thing I need to heal myself, right? So it's all of those things that you need to be mindful of. Those are all seeds, right? I don't believe in one thing being then developing into something big. I think, maybe there is more than one sign that you need to be aware of, that you need to appreciate, but also you need to be mindful of the fact that no seeds will ever grow without water, right? So you need to nourish that one thing that you have captured, that you have noticed, that has happened to you, because otherwise will never materialize. So I guess that's what I did over the years. I know that I knew I was interested in nutrition. I was okay, I'm going to expand on this very short training. I did a full degree later on. And that's how it happened.
You know, as you were talking about your journey, a couple of things came to my mind. The first one is that oftentimes we start kind of being interested in something in a particular area when we have had ourselves this particular issue. And oftentimes, once we have solved it for us, we want to help others to kind of address the same problem. And the second thing that you've mentioned is around the importance of taking a break. And I feel a lot of people who are ambitious, type A personalities really struggle with this concept, because if you slow down, you're not kind of productive, you're not achieving anything. But then it's just so powerful that when you had this like forced break because you were in between jobs, and you had you could completely relax and not think about all of these pressures to perform, to produce, etc. This is where some powerful insights kind of start coming through. And to me, it's just a confirmation that maybe the insights about ourselves are not actually super deep down. They're actually pretty close to the surface, but you just need to ease a bit, and relax and not always be under pressure, but let your mind kind of wander and explore some areas of interest.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, how many times we notice something and we say, oh yeah, I need to watch that movie. Oh yes, I need to read that book. And then maybe you read it somewhere, but then, life goes on and you forget about it. But I think at times we just really need to be more mindful of what take our attention, right? And then, again, water that seeds, nourish that seed, because maybe that's who you are. If you're unhappy right now, be more mindful of the things around you that give you a little bit more joy.
And can you tell me more about the moment when you were making this transition? Was there some point at which point did you realize, okay, now it's time to leave finance, start my own business? Like, how did it all happen?
So it was lockdown, and I was on maternity leave. And as you know, during COVID, life was pretty miserable for all of us, right? I had graduated a few months before. I graduated in 2020. So, everything was very confusing for me because, of course, we were locked in. I had a newborn. I had a toddler. My mom was dying of cancer. So life was extremely complicated at that point. So I just, took extended leave. I knew I wasn't ready to go back to work after my maternity leave. So I just took some time off just to spend the last few months that my mom had. And when she eventually died, I realized, gosh, life is so short. Life is just so short, right? We had moved to the countryside in the meantime. And of course, I had 2 children at that point, 2 very young children at that point. And I realized I don't really want anybody to raise my children. I don't want someone to come to my house because I need to leave with the train at 6:30 to get into London and then come home when they're already in bed. So that made me realize I'm not too sure. Hold on. So that was one point. The other point was that after having graduated, I had been seeing friends and family for free, right? Like, I have this problem. Can you help me, Angela? Yes, absolutely. So I realized, actually, I'm helping people for free, right? I could make this my living. And then I thought, how much do I really need? I mean, let's face it. When you work into companies, right, you have a very good salary, especially in the financial sector. But then how much is the commute? How much is the babysitting? How much are all those clothes, those bags, those shoes that I kept buying while I was in the financial sector, but I did not need? So how much was the spending, really? So I in my head, I can totally do this. I can totally, do this. And basically, that's how it happened. In the meantime, my son had started a reception. So we were gathering with other moms. And when I told one of the moms that I had decided to leave finance and I was opening my business, she was, oh, amazing, I want to be your first client and I want to pay. And I was, really? You want to pay? I had no clue how to charge people, what to charge, right? So yes, I had to figure out how much I wanted to charge. And then as, we were going through the process, I was, you're amazing. I need your website. I need to send it to my friends. And I was, I need a website actually. So then I designed my website. So that's how it actually happened, step after step. So again, the boldest decision at that point was actually saying I'm not coming back to the office. But I had understood at that point that actually I could have done it. I could have opened my business. I had enough knowledge at that point. I had enough understanding of how to deal with clients in a service-based environment. And that's how I did it. That's how it happened, really.
I would be really curious to hear, like, from the conversations that you, for example, had with other parents, how do other parents reconcile the corporate job and having kids? It just seems to me that kids oftentimes become a pivotal moment, even for people who were ultra charged and really going full steam ahead on the career topic. Having kids becomes this transitional moment where it becomes such a priority that something like that, like a career which was super important to you before, like pales in comparison. So can you just tell me a bit more about that?
Yes. So when I was working in finance, I will have my little child going to nursery from 8 until 6, until 5, more or less. But yeah, we'll be home around 6. And to be honest, I didn't feel guilty because, I was going to the office. He was going in a place that was looking after him. So, there is not right or wrong way, right? It's what feels right for the person, I feel. And to me, at the beginning, felt right that I wanted to have my corporate career. I was good at it. I liked it. So, someone needs to look after my child. But I guess for me, it's the completely change that happened during the lockdown and the loss of my loved ones that make me reconsider who I really want to be for my children, right? I want to be more present. So yes, they are definitely one of the reasons why I left finance, but I wouldn't say that they are the reasons why I became who I became, right? So I learned everything that I know now because I became very ill while working in the financial sector, right? And for no responsibility of anybody else. It was just me not looking after myself, me wanting to achieve, right? And very often we lose sight with what's inside us, right? So that's, both things are right. Like whether, you make a change because of your children or you keep going because despite your children, I think is absolutely fine as long as you do it, you do the right thing for you. Because leaving your career just because you have children but not fulfilling who you really want to be, I think it's not right, right? Because you're going to be a very unhappy mother. So it's never going to be making anybody happy if you're unhappy in the first place, right? So it's I think it's about finding that place that allows you to pay the bills, allows you to be happy, allows your kids to see you enough. All of those things need to be considered, because it's not the amount of time you spend with your children, is the quality of the time, right? But yeah, it comes with a huge weight, whether it's economical or whether it's psychological. Becoming a parent makes decisions a little bit more difficult from a professional standpoint.
And did you have this type of financial doubts or any other type of doubts as you were leaving finance? Or did it feel so organic to you that you were like, okay, I'm going and I'm having no fears, no concerns?
When I make a decision, I make a decision. Like, I don't look back necessarily, and I don't need much time to make a decision. So when I decided I'm not going back, life is too short, I don't think I calculated too much in my head. I knew I could have afforded it for up to 1 year. And I was confident enough that I was going to be making money. during that period, right? For me, it's very easy to make decisions once I know I'm not happy, right? But it probably takes me time to understand really that I am not. So maybe I'm procrastinating a little bit, but when it comes decision time, I'll make the decision.
That's it. Yeah. And maybe then on the practical side, would you have any tips for people who are about to make this decision? Like what should they consider on financial side, on the business side? Like would you recommend people to start their business on the side of a full-time job, or like finish one thing and start the other thing?
Yes, I guess it depends on the job, right? It depends on the service, because of course it cannot be conflicting with the job, the work that you already do. See, my idea before I decided, I just want to leave, was actually to work on the side of my full-time, my job in the financial sector. And that's probably one good way of doing it, right? But it didn't feel right to me, because it would not have addressed the points that I mentioned before, that I wanted to be more with my children. I just wanted to be more holistic in a way, in also the way I dealt with myself. Because let's face it, I mean, if I had kept that job, I would still have had the stress of going to the office, the stress of that job, and then the stress of my new job, of setting that one up, and I have young children. So to me at that point, it felt way too convoluted for what I had gone through already, right? Maybe at another point in time, I would have been able to manage it, but not at that point. I was already too overwhelmed. So it was a clear cut for me. But it's a very good way of starting, to be honest. It's a very good way of starting part-time. That you do something for like Friday, Saturday, and then you work the remaining of the week in your employed job. That's a good way of doing it. It just needs to feel right for you. But one advice I would say is spend as much time while you are paid understanding what will make you happy, because you have the capital to invest, right? So you have the salary that you can not spend on clothes, on shoes or bags, but invest instead in trainings, in things that could capture your attention. And then only once you feel, okay, this is what I'm studying, this is what I'm going to be doing, then at that point, probably you're ready to decide that you're ready to go.
And on a financial cushion side, obviously there is no kind of number or right or wrong answer, but how should, if there was any generic principle you could give to people around how to think about, the buffer on the finance side?
I would say allow yourself 1 year. I mean, it takes many, many years for a business to thrive, right? So it really depends on what are your services. Of course, if you're launching a product, you need investments into your business, right? But we're talking services. So the capital invested at that point is not massive. You will have expenses every month, but you need to be clever in understanding how do I use the capital that I put on the side, and never be too drawn to the fact that you are not going to be making as much, because what I felt and what many people have felt is that you're actually going to lower your spending so much. I felt I was in a golden cage, right? So I needed that salary because I needed to spend it on those things, right? They were very, very expensive. But you couldn't sustain those things unless you have that salary. But you're drawn to those things, right? So it becomes really a golden cage, because all those shiny things that you want to be having need that salary to be kept. Reality is that once you step away, you probably don't need all of those things, right? So be mindful of really, what is it that I really need? What do I need in my day-to-day that if I don't go to the office, or if I am another person?
But some people who may be making this spending now may be thinking, oh, but what if I'm going to miss those things? Because like it's part of my identity to do these things, to buy this type of stuff. How was your experience with that topic? Did you ever feel like you were missing this kind of all this stuff that were requiring so much expense?
Yeah, well, at times I miss it, right? But then those times I might simply have it, right? It's really about understanding where do you want your value. I mean, for me, I was eating in very expensive restaurants probably once a week, right? I don't need to do that anymore. I was buying so many clothes and so many things that I still don't know where they are in my house, right? So if I want to buy something expensive, I will buy that one off. But I feel very often we need those very expensive things because we need that dopamine boost, we need to cheer ourselves up. I remember so many times during lunchtime, I would go shopping and then go back to the office because probably unconsciously I was thinking, I'm not that happy. I definitely need those shoes. I need those shoes and then I can go back, right? So don't make that judgment based on who you are and where you are right now. Just allow yourself the space to think that probably you don't necessarily need it, necessarily later on. So that's my only advice, really. Don't think you are so attached to something now, you're going to be needing it tomorrow, because tomorrow you're a different person.
Can you tell me how you started your business? And imagine a person who's thinking about starting, for example, a side business in service-based space, whether it's nutrition or something else. What do they need to know about setting up this type of business, and what are the tips to grow this business? What has worked for you best on this journey?
So I think the first thing is reach out to people that have done it before you, because there is no shame, right, in asking, well, how did you do it? So if you know someone that has done it and you want to do something similar, probably that's the best person for you. For me, I think what was extremely helpful was networking, as in, not necessarily networking with my peers, with my nutrition colleagues, which I found extremely helpful, and I do it once a month, but also networking with other business owners, just to understand what are their needs, what are they looking for, there are people like accountants, VA, those other careers that you might be needing as services. So network as much as possible, because even if you think I'm going to be doing it by myself, you might end up needing those services while you go on holidays or when you're a little bit more stretched. So that's a really nice way of making you a little bit more free in a way, because as a business owner, you have so much on, right? You are your marketing team, you are your finance team, your admin team, IT, and by the way, you're also doing, the one-to-one job work. So it's
Let's
a
not
lot.
Forget that.
Yeah, exactly, right? The second one, and I never thought of it, was your track record is extremely important. I never for a minute thought that my 17 years in the financial sector will be helpful where I am now, from also a personal standpoint. Yes, of course, I have learned to work, right? I've learned to be professional. I've learned, many, many technical skills. But what I did not appreciate was how much that was important for my future, like my connections. So who I was in those 17 years were important for my future career. So lots of people reach out, telling me, oh, you were so good when you were doing that, and you were not even that passionate about it. So I definitely want to become your client now because I trust you. So the track record is there. So don't close the door with what you were before, because actually those can be your big sponsors, big clients, supporters. Anything really from the previous career can be helpful for you, not just what you have learned from a technical standpoint.
And in terms of growing the client base, growing your presence, what have you found most helpful?
When you launch any business, it takes about 3 months for Google to pick up that you exist, right? So I guess in the first 3 months, it's lots of word of mouth. So if you live in a small community or a small area, or you have friends, I think those 3 months you need to be very good at that. You need to be very good at promoting yourself, in the places where people can see you. But after that point, your clients will be your existing clients, if you have done a good job, will be your biggest sales force, I feel, right? I have lots of referrals from other clients. As I said, my ex-colleagues are also, some of them are my clients. And then, it's social media. It's the social media, is your testimonials, is, your website, lots of those things. And it's nice to put yourself out there also in terms of physical events, for example. The more you put yourself out there, the better it is. And make sure you're doing the most with your existing contacts.
And shifting more from practical side of things more to the life that you have right now, on kind of feelings and emotional level, what does your day-to-day look like, and how does it compare to your days when you were in financial services?
So the main thing is they're different, right? Because I don't like every day to be the same. So, for example, I don't tend to work on Monday morning. I have always hated working on Monday morning because you're just so disconnected at the weekend, and then suddenly Monday arrives and you need to be all power on. So I don't like that. So I tend to ease myself into work on Monday morning. So that's probably the lightest day for me. I have some clients that do want to meet on Monday, so maybe I start at 12 at that point. So Mondays, are like that. Fridays, I tend to do like most of the networking, whether it was one place or the others. But then it's really dependent on the clients that I have. And I'm also very mindful of not having too many clients on the same day. I try to stagger them throughout the week, in a way that allows me to work on their case enough and with a clear mind. Because if I were to see 7 clients in one day, by the end of the day, by the time I need to tell them and write down what to do, I wouldn't remember what one told me versus the other as much as you can have enough notes. So I try to, book my agendas in a way that is respectful for me and for them as well.
And what do you find in this new lifestyle more exciting and more challenging versus? So flexibility is one, obviously you've mentioned it, and not working on Monday morning sounds pretty amazing. Anything else in terms of like your existing lifestyle that kind of feels better aligned with you? And also, what are the challenges in comparison to employment?
So yes, the good things is that I learn every day so many things, right? And I really love learning those new things. Like I love when my clients are all different, right? As much as maybe I focus on something, but reality behind that one symptom, there is just a variety of problems. So I always find myself having to study so much every day. Whether I study for an exam or I study for my clients, I study. Most of my days are studying. So that I find it extremely interesting. At the beginning was a little bit strange for me is that in finance, there is one way to calculate, standard deviation. There is one way to calculate NAV. There is one way of doing things. Once that formula is set, you just apply it. The rule says this, you follow those rules. In science, it's not like that. Our bodies are just so different, right? So you find one study telling you one thing, one other study telling you the opposite of that one thing. So it's about the digging. So that at the beginning, I couldn't understand. So, why am I reading something that says one thing and I'm reading the exact same thing that says the opposite thing? So it's about understanding what's behind it, right? So that at the beginning was a bit, strange to me, coming with a finance mind. And I think the more challenging part is, of course, the fact that every day you need to try to make money. Right, because if you don't, there isn't that salary coming at the end of the month, and I guess that has given me such an appreciation of what I was saying before, what I need and what I don't need, right, and has really given me lots of understanding of how much is my value, right? How much is worth my time. So that probably is the most challenging bit. because maybe my mindset is not there yet, having, had a salary for 17 years. So at times I need to bring myself back and say, hold on, am I actually doing something that will eventually turn into money? Because otherwise I need to do it in my free time or whenever.
Day to day, does it feel like more entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I mean, what I find extremely, exciting is the fact that every day I can decide where I want to go. Like the sky is the limit, really. And to me, that is the most exciting part of my job, right? Because, I think I heard one day you are one client away from success, one client away from failure, right? Although, of course, that's not necessarily going to be for the service I sell, but that is more or less what it is, right? Every day you can make such a big difference to your business. While when you are, in an office space, yeah, you're probably going to be making a huge win one day, but it's never going to be yours, right? So I think that is what makes me proud at time. It's not necessarily how much money I have achieved by the end of the year, it's what are the foundations that I'm creating underneath my company, right? That will eventually bring to much better results tomorrow. So I'm not drawn towards the quick win at all. I'm more drawn towards the long-lasting, success of my company.
The fact that you're helping people directly with their health, does it make a difference in terms of how you feel about your job? Does it also contribute to this feeling of fulfillment?
Oh yeah, that is the main thing, right? What really drives me every day is actually the results that my clients achieve. It's not necessarily what I do, is, what they get out of it. To me, if a client, texts me that they're finally getting out of antidepressant medications, because they're finally, eating the right thing for them. They have, addressed their nutritional deficiency and they have, done an amazing job. That's a great win, right? If someone has, regular periods when they didn't have any for, 6 months, for example, that's huge achievements because it means that they can finally plan for a family, right? So all those little things, reversing autoimmunity and all, it can be from losing some kilos to really big win. If that's what they want, it gives me so much energy really to keep going.
So looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self? And what advice would you give to other people who are not quite fulfilled and don't know about their next step just yet?
If I look back, I will enforce more self-care. That's my main advice to my own younger self. I mean, it's not right that you don't feel well, right? So even if they tell you you're fine, maybe make changes to understand whether something shifts. So probably self-care is extremely important, which does not mean, a massage in lunchtime, rushing there, rushing back, which by the way, I had plenty, or a yoga session at lunchtime, rushing in and rushing back. That's not necessarily self-care. That's filling in the agenda even further. So it's really allow for enough time. Don't overbook yourself, which I have always been bad at. And that's why now I'm extremely mindful of not doing again. To others, I think listen to your symptoms, to yourself a little bit more. If you, like me, don't tend to do that, I think it's an extremely important clue, the fact that, you're not well, or the fact that you don't feel happy to be going, to do the same thing. Those are clues that maybe there is a better something for you, right?
And as your children start navigating the world of employment, careers, what guidelines and advice would you give to them?
I think it's about, building the resilience. And I think young generation need that even more than what we needed, right? Because they're always overly judged at this point in time, right? Whether it's social media, whether, there are some pretty unachievable standards, I will say. So it's about resilience. Make them curious because, I have very young children. They always tell me they don't want to do anything. So I don't impose anything on them, but I expose them. But without overdoing it. I think at times we can easily overdo it with our children because it's just more possible now, right? Everything is on demand, everything is available. So I think finding the right balance to give them the space to develop in what they want to be.
Amazing. Angela, thank you so much for being here with me today. Loved our conversation, and best of luck on your journey ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.